Cool. All right. Hopefully this works. All right. Should be good to go. Yeah, feel free to keep your cameras off, cameras on, whatever you want. So if you have questions along the way, throw them into the chat, interrupt me. Everything's good. We'll have a fun time. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to my little workshop here about fintech from Cal. Essentially, what this is going to be is just an overview of how you might want to consider getting into an engineering job in the finance industry. This is going to be a focus on like traditional finance, like the whole New York vibe, not so much things like Robinhood or Square or anything like that, but we're going to be talking about the whole industry of finance, how it's different from tech, and how you might need to restructure your application, your resume in order to meet that industry. And yeah, we'll be going over that. We'll be going over the interview process and everything, and how you can really make the most of your time here at Cal to be able to prepare you for that industry. So a little bit about me. This is me. I look a lot better in that photo than I do right now, but nice to meet you. I'm a fourth year, I'm a senior here at Cal studying computer science and pure mathematics. I threw my email up there. If you have any questions, if like any longer questions, if you want me to like review your resume or anything like that, just shoot me an email. It's pretty easy to remember. I have had 2 quantitative internships in the past. The first one was at Goldman Sachs, and the second one was at Point72 Asset Management. I'm sure you've all heard of Goldman. Maybe you haven't heard of Point72. The first is an investment bank, and the second one is a hedge fund, and we'll talk a little bit later about what that actually means. The work I've done there has ranged from more traditional software. For instance, at Goldman, I had to build an email pipeline to be able to send out emails to bankers on a weekly basis. To more finance mathy things. I worked on a platform for the pre-issuance hedging of fixed rate debt in the derivatives department in Goldman. Did some investment predictions, used some fun machine learning there as part of the M&A group at Goldman. Did some data science work at Point72 related to streaming services, and did some fun stuff with cross-currency trades and currency swaps. So that's just a quick overview. If you don't know what all those words mean, it's okay, you don't need to. I'm sure that by the time you're done with this, you probably still won't know what those words mean, but it's fine. All you need to know is that I've been around the block a few times. I kind of have a feel for the industry, and I hope I can pass some of that on to you guys. All right, yeah, this is just some of the things we're going to be talking about. What are some of the weird terms that you should know before you even jump into the industry? What are some of the differences between tech and finance? What your application should look like when you're applying to a traditional finance firm? We're going to do some fun little practice interview questions. I know you guys probably all know like the whole probability puzzles when you're applying to be a quant trader and that kind of thing. And I thought it'd be fun to throw a few of those in there. And what you can do at Cal right here with your next few years to be able to maximize your chances of being able to get into one of these. Right. We're not going to do like a full finance course. Investopedia is great for that if you are looking for any of the really complex terms that you see thrown around. But what we are going to do is we're going to talk about some of the words that you should know when you're looking for a job or when you're trying to get into the industry. Right now is probably a pretty good time to actually have this workshop. One thing that you should know off the bat is that finance firms typically start recruiting much earlier than tech firms. In fact, some of them, I think, probably already have applications out right now for next summer. Typical recruiting is going to run from June to August. So if you're interested in going into this industry, starting early is definitely the move. These are a few of the roles that you can look at that you'll be able to see in most financial companies. There's going to be your traditional software engineering, where you're going to be doing normal engineering work, infrastructure, application development, platform management, that kind of thing, and going to be building out internal toolkits for these companies. That's probably the one that's most directly similar to much of the many of the traditional roles you'll find in tech, and is also usually the biggest one. The last 4 are typically the more financy ones. You usually hear the umbrella term quant applied to all of these. More typically, quant refers to the whole trading aspect of things at specific firms, but all 4 of these things are at different firms, the definition of what a quant is. Quants do risk management. They're risk management and risk analysis quants. They're the people that look at a company's portfolio and decide like, okay, well, how risky is a certain decision that we might make, a certain investment, etc. The traders, you guys probably all know, the people at places like Jane Street, and like Hudson River Trading. And these are the people that are going to be creating mathematical trading algorithms that execute really, really high frequency trades. Typically, this is like the most, I guess, quote unquote, intense of the quant roles. It's the one that most people think about when they think of quants. They think of the dudes, the guys and girls with like 15 different screens, numbers flashing all over the place, executing trades left and right. That's what the traders usually do. Then you have the strategists, which is typically a role that is unique to the banking world, not so much in all of the other places, but the strategists are the people that create trading strategies, and they create mathematical models to be able to assist in M&A, mergers and acquisitions. They're the people that kind of bring math to every single department within a bank. And the last one is a quant developer. Sometimes the developer role is kept separately from the other roles. Sometimes it's just part of the job description, but they're the people that kind of actually maintain the infrastructure for these models to actually work. There are a few different types of financial services companies that you should know about when you're applying. The first people are the proprietary trading firms. You might also know them as prop shops. And they're on what we call the buy side. The buy side means people who are buying securities off the market, the people who are typically investing money, sometimes it's their own money, sometimes it's a client's money, into a company directly. So prop shops are firms that are trading. They're trading on all sorts of different securities, but they use the firm's own money. So they use money that is owned by the company. They don't typically serve a lot of clients outside the company. They don't really have clients. They're using their own money to invest. Examples you might know are Jane Street, Optiver, Hudson River Trading, and Jump Trading, mostly located in Chicago, although there are a few in New York. The second type of company is the hedge fund, also on the buy side. So they're also buying securities. These are firms that invest pooled client money. And what pooled client money means is that they have a few clients, typically not too many, who are usually high net worth individuals. That's HNWI. And what they want to do is within a short period of time, they want to maximize the return on that portfolio. So they're going to be using a lot of research, a lot of alternatives data to be able to maximize how much money they can get safely on a client's money. Examples include Citadel, 2 Sigma, 0.72, and AQR. And the last one is investment bank. And investment banks are different from the last two. They're on the sell side, which means they're the ones who are actually managing the distribution and sale of securities. They're the people that assist, that give advice when it comes to raising capital. They're the people that issue actual securities for people to trade on. Examples include Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan Chase. So these are the three that that most people are typically thinking of when they're thinking of internships on the tech side. You also have private equity firms and stuff like that, but those are usually less attractive to most people right now. If you go into private equity, typically you have to start at one of these places for a few years before you can actually make the jump in. And also, private equity isn't as attractive for software most of the time. All right. There's most of the lingo out of the way. It's probably the driest part of this presentation. So what are the differences between a tech job and a finance job? Work culture is definitely massively different at traditional firms. Everything is way more structured. There is a great deal of regulation and oversight, as I'm sure you guys all know. Finance is super, super heavily regulated, and everything has to pass through compliance before you can do anything. You have much less freedom than you do in most software companies, and it's very often, it can often be difficult to get really close with higher ups and have an influence in the company's decisions when you're still like a newer person or a junior member. But benefits are typically much higher. You get pretty fat bonuses if you're working in finance. Even on the internship side of things, you typically make a lot more than you will in a software engineering internship. But that's typically only going to be true of the real top trading firms or the top banks. And it's one of those things where like the pay gets exponentially better the longer you're at most of these companies. Like an entry-level engineer at Goldman is probably making around the same as an entry-level engineer at Google, maybe a little less. But as you stay there longer and longer, you get huge bonuses as you move up the ladder and that kind of thing. And the bonus culture is really what drives the compensation at these firms. When you're looking at algorithmic design positions and like the top trading jobs and the top research jobs, you probably do need to have a PhD. Most of those guys have PhDs in physics, in chemistry, in theoretical mathematics, and that kind of thing. Typically not actually in computer science, surprisingly enough. But you do need to have kind of that level of expertise in the stuff that you do to be able to get into one of those really, really top positions. The quant world is becoming more and more startup-y as time goes on. A lot of people who run a lot of prop shops are people who are ex-Google, ex-Facebook, that kind of thing, and they bring a lot of that culture with them. So quant, especially like the whole engineering side, but especially in the quant realm, is getting less and less hierarchical. It's more open door offices, that kind of thing. Really trying to make it feel like a tech company. So those are some of the outside differences. All right, how to structure your application. It's pretty straightforward, actually. Like it's nothing, there's no magic to this or anything like that. The general advice is put metrics everywhere. You should have numbers all over your resume. Every single thing that you do, you should try to make it focus towards some kind of tangible result, some kind of number. Finance firms do not care about your passions. Unfortunately, they do not care about your hobbies or what you care about or philanthropic stuff that you do or volunteering. What they do care about is that, hey, I'm smart. Look, I've taken all these classes. I've built a lot of projects. I've done all of this work, and here are my numbers, and here's how well I performed. Make a trading bot. It's pretty easy. You can find like tutorials in like any programming language on the internet. It's definitely something that's nice to have, and it's definitely something that they will ask you about in an interview. Grades, yes, you do actually need grades. One other big difference between tech and finance is that they do always ask for your resume, ask for your transcript when you're applying. You don't have to stress too much about it, but at the same time, like 3.7 or higher is generally good advice. If not, don't worry. You can always get in through other things like projects. You can get in through research. You can get in through a million other ways. But having a solid transcript is definitely one pretty solid way of at least making it past the first few rounds. Be someone who is highly technical, who really, really loves difficult technical challenges, because that's really what they look for. Some people have asked me before, hey, do I need a double major to be able to apply to a finance job? The answer is kind of. Typically, you do want something other than just computer science, just because a lot of the skills you need as a quant or in a financial software role, it doesn't, like those jobs don't really require you to be the best coder in the world, but they do require you to think in a very specific way. And that style of thinking is really mostly taught in places like stats, in math, in physics, even in chemistry and that kind of thing. So if you have room on your plate for it, I would definitely suggest considering picking up a double major or a minor. And of course, know some basic programming languages, Python, SQL, C++, etc. A lot of firms are going to have their own weird programming languages that they developed in like 1985. And you're going to have to learn those anyway. But these are the solid ones that you probably are going to need to know pretty ubiquitously for most of the work that you do. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause real quick here in case anyone has any questions so far. I know it's a lot of talking. Don't worry. The fun and interesting questions will come soon. But if anyone has any questions, throw them in the chat and give it like 30 seconds or just say so out
loud. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure. What's up?
So like as a software engineer, I mean the CS major, so are you interested in this field to get your job as your career? Are you interested in getting into fintech?
That's a difficult question. I think my case is a little unique, in which case, where I'm not currently looking to go back into fintech, even though I worked there for a few years, but that's it's a pretty complicated story, and like I can definitely answer that question more in depth over email or something like that.
Oh, okay. Because my follow-up question is, I heard about the benefits. It's about those type of company is maybe they're getting paid as much as the other like big tech companies, and if you get into like the algo job, like you could get a really high position, they could pay you a lot of compensation for that. And how about what I heard about the financial companies, their work stress is very high, even as like any employees in those type of fields. I mean, one of my friends works in the Chase Bank, and he's like 24 hours on the front of the computer. So I was kind of like, I'm a CS major, but I trying to not to go to those companies. But what could be the reason that I might choose. I mean, I want to hear out the real benefits.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. The main thing here is, first of all, most of the people that work at these companies, you gotta like money. You gotta like money a lot, both for yourself and working with money. And a lot of people, that's the reason they get in, is just this fascination with how money moves. But in terms of the whole work hours thing, yes, it is true that finance, you're typically working a lot. Even in my internships, I was typically working 10 to 12 hours a day, but that's also not that much longer than most tech companies if you're working on serious projects. On the tech side of things, the lifestyle is much better than non-tech. If you're a banker, for instance, an investment banker, you could be working 16-hour days, 18-hour days, but they treat tech people pretty differently. So your lifestyle is actually it's not going to be like the horror stories you hear about, or like you might have seen the whole Goldman employees were complaining about like the long work hours or whatever. They typically treat the tech side much, much nicer because they know, right? They know that if they're going to make an engineer work like 18 hours a day, that engineer isn't going to stay very long because you don't have to work 18 hours a day at Facebook. So it's much more relaxed. It's really the work environment, especially the pure, I guess, tech, the pure quant firms, stuff like the AQR, the Jane Street, the HRT, they're much, much more like tech companies. And yes, the comp is insanely higher at those companies. It doesn't hold true for every single bank, but you will see starting salaries at places like Jane Street and Citadel upwards of like 250K pre-bonus. So there's a lot of money involved when you get into those companies.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, I got it in the chat if you want the TLDR. Oh, all right. It's time for the fun part. Oh wait, I just completely skipped this slide. Okay, the interview. What are the parts of the interview? Technical interviews at finance firms are typically pretty long. I think both of mine that I've had, the final round was upwards of 4 to 5 hours. There's going to be a brief behavioral portion where they're just going to ask about, hey, why are you working here? What do you want to do here? Why are you applying here over anywhere else? Are you a hard worker? Typically, what you want to do in that scenario is just tell them like, hey, I will work my ass off for the next however long. Like, why am I here? I'm here because I love the firm and I want to make the firm a lot of money. Typically, answers along those lines are what they're looking for. They're not as interested in your passions or anything like that. Again, they're interested in knowing, hey, is this kid going to come here? Are they going to work? And like, can they handle what we're going to throw at them? Because you do some pretty challenging work in these internships even. And they just want to make sure that you're ready for it. You'll have to do some general software engineering and coding questions, so do your lead code. They will come up, even if you're not applying for software engineering, you're applying for quant stuff, you're still going to need to know your software engineering stuff. You're going to need to know some system stuff. You're definitely going to need to know your algorithms. So pay attention in 170 and all of those things. You'll get some math questions for sure. Both, even as a software engineer, you'll probably still get thrown some math questions, although probably less than what you would get in the quant role. They need to know that you know your stats, that you know your basic statistics, that you've brushed up on machine learning, if you've taken an ML class. You should know all your regressions and everything like that. And you should have those things down pat. There are lots of books online, lots of free books where you can get all of these math questions. A lot of mental math involved usually. They might throw some like math puzzles at you and like you're gonna have to calculate on the spot. But nothing too stressful. And usually they're all pretty nice about it because they know how daunting the interview process is. So your interviewers get it. They're there to help you. Every single interview I've had at a quantitative firm has had like the nicest people, really supportive, and they're there to help you out. And then you have the puzzles, which typically only show up in like strategist or quant or like trading interviews. You've probably heard of them. Places like Jane Street are notorious for them. They're like the weird little puzzles that they're going to throw at you, and you're going to have to like struggle with it, and they're going to watch you flounder around for a not so obvious answer. But in my opinion, those are also a lot of fun because you don't really get to do that anywhere else. So speaking of which, let's hop in. Let's do a few puzzles. So I have 3 puzzles here. They are all, well, the first 2 are pretty easy. they're on the easier side of things. But again, don't fret if you can't get it. This is just for fun, so you guys can kind of get a glance at what it kind of looks like. The last question is more difficult. If you've taken CS70, you might actually be able to come up with a solution relatively quickly. But don't be upset if you don't. I thought it was pretty hard, and it's a lot of fun though. So we'll see. All right, so the first question is find x if x to the x to the x to the x, and the tower of x's goes on forever. If x to the x to the x to the x equals 2, what is x? Give you guys like, I don't know, a minute or so, and if you want to, I guess you can just drop it in the chat if you would like, if you have thoughts on how you can do this. Typically in an interview, if you're throwing something like this, they'll give you like, I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes to crank out a solution. But of course, you can always ask questions. I should have like Jeopardy music playing or something. All right, a few of you have sent me answers right so far. Yep. Everyone who's messaged me so far, you got it. All right. Let's walk through these steps and see how you would actually solve this problem. It's pretty straightforward. It looks like most of you got it. Of course, x to the x to the x, the tower of x is equals 2. So you can take the log. So ln x to the x to the x, whatever, equals ln of 2. Then, as we know, you can remove the exponent, and the exponent of x to the x to the x, whatever, is itself, essentially. So you can just bring that down out of the log. And of course, we know that equals 2, so you can just substitute 2 back in. So 2 ln x equals ln of 2. Ln of x equals 1/2 ln 2, and then you can take the 1/2 and you can put it inside the log of 2, basic logarithm rules. And then you have ln x equals ln root 2, so x equals root 2. Pretty straightforward. Hope you guys have fun with that one. Good to get warmed up. All right. Next one. How many digits are in 99 to the 99? This one's a little bit less direct. It's a little more tricky, but Give you like 30 more seconds. All right, cool. Let us start stepping into the solution for this one. A little less obvious than the first one. So the first thing that you can do to make this a little easier is to simplify 99 to the 99. And 99 is 100 times 0.99. So you can kind of split apart this exponent into two different things that are a little bit easier to compute. So 100 to the 99 is equal to 10 to the 198. And 10 to the x has x plus 1 digits. So as you guys should know, like 10 squared has 3 digits, 10 cubed has 4 digits, etc. So 10 to the 198 has 199 digits. So that takes care of the whole 100 to the 99 part. What about the 0.99 to the 99 part? That part's a little less obvious. What you can do is this approximation, is that if you can kind of rearrange this and realize, okay, 0.99 is 1 minus 100th. If you can see that, you can kind of make this approximation that we get like, okay, 1 minus 1 over 100 to the 100th power. And if you guys know the limit definition of E, which is 1 plus 1 over x to the x, the limit as x goes to infinity. And in this case, it's e to the negative 1 because there's a minus instead of a plus inside the parentheses. That's approximately equal to 1 over e. And 1 over e is about on the order of 10 to the negative 1. It's about on the order of 0.1. So what we know from that is the final amount of digits is 199 minus 1. So that's going to be 198 digits. This one's a little more tricky, a little less obvious, especially if you don't get the E approximation. And there are other ways to do this too. But this is probably the clean one. And this is, I thought this was a fun question. Kind of makes you think outside the box a little bit. All right, question number 3. This one is definitely a bit harder. You pay attention to the question. I couldn't actually fit the whole thing, so I had to paraphrase it. But you have a countably infinite number of prisoners. They're all wearing either a red or a blue hat. This line of prisoners has to line up single file, and they have to tell the guard what color hat they're wearing. They cannot see what color hat they have on their own head, but they can see everyone in front of them. They also are not allowed to turn around and look behind them in line. If they are wrong about what color hat they are wearing, they will be executed. What strategy could the prisoners come up with? So the prisoners can't talk to each other, but they can, like, I don't know, write down a strategy for how to do this. What strategy could they implement in the numbers that they say that will result in finitely many executions? As a little bit of a hint, if you have taken real analysis, thinking about equivalence classes could be helpful here. Equivalence relations plays really nicely into here. If you haven't, don't worry about it. But this one's kind of fun. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Again, countably infinite number of prisoners. They have to line up single file, and tell the guard what color hat is on their own head. If they get the color wrong, they're executed. How do you minimize the number of executions? They cannot look behind themselves. They cannot talk to each other. They can only see what's in front of them. They can look side to side, right? Yeah, they can, but they're all a single file. So like they can only see the people that are in front of them in line. And they can see all the people that are in front of them in line. This one's definitely pretty hard, so no stress. Yeah. No, they're a single file, like single file front to back. As another hint, it's also helpful to reduce this problem to a set of binary strings. They can see everyone in front of them. So if you're position 10 billion in line, you can see all the 10 billion people in front of you. Yep, I mean, that's one strategy. Like, count how many are in front of them, and based on that, you can say a color. Yeah, essentially, the only information each prisoner has is, or the only information they can get at that point in time is whoever's in front of them. Yeah. And like all their hats, but they can't see their own hat. Not sure what you mean by even and odd. All right, let us hop into the solution. The solution is a little bit complicated. It's not a trick question. So the solution is as complicated as the problem is. But what you kind of want to do in this scenario is you want to start thinking about, okay, red and blue. When you have red and blue and you have people lined up in a line, the easiest way to think about it is turn them into binary strings. And you're going to want to have a string of binary strings for the hats, say red is 1, blue is 0, something like that. What you want to do beforehand, before you even get into the line, is you want to think of all possible collections of binary strings, so all infinitely long binary strings, and you want to group them together. And how are you going to group them together? So the way you're going to group all these strings together is, we're going to say that if we have two strings, string A and string B, and they're different from each other in only finitely many places, then we say they're related. So two strings are related if they're different from each other in exactly finitely many places. If you take an analysis, you'll recognize that what we're doing is we're forming an equivalence relation. So we're saying that under these set of rules, we're going to consider these strings related to each other. So you're going to group all strings that are related to each other based on this definition we just came up with. And that's something called a class. Or in analysis, it's called a class. So you're going to have all of these different groups of infinitely long strings. So each group is going to have every single element different from every other element in exactly finitely many places. And they're going to be the same everywhere else except for those finitely many places. Once you have all of your groups set up, you can choose one string to represent that group. And that's going to be the one string you remember. And you're going to say, oh, okay, if I remember this one string, I am representing every single string in this group that I just came up with. So when a prisoner comes up, they can see by looking forward what group the true string is in, right? The true string being the actual hats that everyone is wearing. So the prisoner can see that, and they will be able to filter out and narrow down exactly what group this is in, what group they are in. And all they have to do is say their position in the representative string that they've remembered for that group. So if there's, I don't know, there's obviously an infinite collection of strings and an infinite collection of classes. What you're going to want to do is you're going to say like, okay, I see like red, blue, red, red, blue, red, blue, red, red, blue, whatever in front of me. So now I know what class I'm in. So now if I just read off my position in that string, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to be okay. And because the strings are different from each other in only finitely many places, only a finite number of prisoners are going to be executed, because that string can only be, the true string can only be different from the representative string in a finite number of places. So that is the solution to this one. This one is definitely much more difficult than the last two. So don't fret about it if you didn't get it. All right. If first person says red if there's an even number of red hats in front, and blue if there's an odd number of red hats in front. Second person will compare his answer, the parity, to see the number of red hats you can see. There's no guarantee there's an equal number of red and blue hats. If that's kind of the logic that you're going for. They could all be red, they could all be blue. All right, I'll look at it later then, and we can talk about it. Okay, so the last section of what I'm going to talk about here is how can you prepare at Cal? Now that you're here, you're at UC Berkeley, you're pretty fortunate because when it comes to schools, finance firms do look at your school, and thankfully Berkeley happens to be one of the best ones you can go to. So definitely good. And we're going to just briefly discuss what can you do to prepare yourself here. First off is classes. You do need to take, there are certain classes you kind of do need to take to be able to be adequately prepped for a quant role. And I've put a list of them up here. Some of them are redundancies and cover the same things. There are also a bunch of like IOR classes that probably cover all of this, but I don't know any of the IOR classes, so I couldn't put them down. You definitely got to know CS70 if you're a CS major. CS70 is like essential, it's your bread and butter to be able to get into the door. It's helpful to have taken EE120 just because of the whole time series thing that sometimes is going to show up. It's also sometimes helpful in answering interview questions. EE126 is another one that you should really, really be looking at. Stochastic processes, probability theory, you've got to have it down to be able to get in the door at these places. EE127 as well, optimization theory. CS189, machine learning, not as important because not every quant does machine learning, but a lot of them do. And data 100 as well. From the stats department, stat 134, intro to probability, stat 135, intro to statistics, and stat 140, which is data science, like probability and data science, also good. If you've noticed, there's a lot of emphasis on probability here. Math 53, yes, you do need to know multivariable calculus. I've been asked multivariable, oh, did my speaker just disconnect? Hold on. All right. I have been asked questions before about doing like calculating double integrals and triple integrals like that in an interview. So knowing your multi is definitely super helpful. You definitely got to know linear algebra. You should know all of your linear algebra stuff down pat. Math 110 is great for that if you're looking to double in math. Otherwise, Math 54, 16A, 16B, definitely things you should know. Physics 112 is helpful. If you go into one of these companies, you're going to meet a lot of physicists, a lot of mathematicians, a lot of chemists. Physics 112 is statistical mechanics. So it's going to be the statistics behind, thermodynamics. It's really helpful to like kind of know how these model systems are going to be evaluated stochastically. It really does help when you're looking at stock volatility and stuff like that. And of course, the UGBA finance classes, you can't really go wrong with that. But this is just a brief overview of some of the things that are probably helpful to take. I've taken a good number of these, and they've all been helpful to me in different ways when I'm trying to get these jobs. And clubs. Really, when it comes to clubs, any of them, like any of the technical ones at least, they're all going to give you amount of experience that's going to be really helpful. I remember I talked about MDB, represent MDB, in my Golden interview, and everyone, like all my interviewers, were super happy with it because what Caltech clubs give you that a lot of other places don't is that they give you the opportunity to work on a project from start to finish. And sometimes, and those projects are bigger than what you would have worked on alone. They kind of prove that, hey, I can work on big projects with a team of people. And even if that club isn't necessarily related to finance, the fact that you're able to do that and you have that experience as a freshman, sophomore, junior is a really, really invaluable skill. So I would highly advise, if you're not in a club right now, apply to one next semester. Most of them are welcoming with open arms. And really go for it. Of course, Fintech at Cal is a relatively newer one. I don't know too much about it, but I'm assuming that they're a pretty good shot that if you get into one of them, you'll get everything you need. But also any of the other, I guess, tech-centric clubs that really focus on building your own projects. Stuff like MLab, Launchpad, MTB, XRAD, blockchain, quantum computing at Berkeley, all of those. Stuff where you actually do have to do your own research and you have to build stuff for yourself are really, really helpful. And I highly, highly advise getting into one of them or applying into one of them. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have prepared. Hopefully everyone had some fun getting to know kind of what this side of things are like. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for coming out.
Yo, Kanye, I had a question about that problem actually. If that's chill.
Oh yeah, which one? The third one?
The last one, yeah. So is it
Yeah.
basically, so do you start like kind of at the back, like is the first person have like a bunch of people in front of him and no one behind him? Is that how it starts?
I mean, so the first person in line has no one in front of them, right? But like that's fine because you're only looking for a finite number of executions, right?
I was trying, so I was thinking like if the first person could see everyone in front of them and then the next person could see everyone in front and not like the first person, then I think I have a solution. Other than that, maybe I like misunderstood the problem, yeah.
Message me afterwards. And we can talk through it because you could be onto something there. What made you go into finance? Two things. One, I like money. Two, I like hard problems, and the problems that you work on in a lot of these firms are like some of the hardest problems on the planet. In terms of just the technical challenge. I just really like the idea of having a job where I could like have a whiteboard and also have a computer. I like the intensity of it. I always wanted to go to New York. That's most of the reasons. I just thought it's fun. Let's do it. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what it's like. It's fast paced for sure. Oh yeah, let me stop recording.